did my time.
I want to wish everybody an absolutely wonderful evening wherever you might be across the world.
I already did my time.
It's that time of the week. It's 6 o'clock. GMT. I nearly forgot where I was for a minute.
I already did my time. I paid for my
1 p.m. ET, Eastern Standard Time.
I paid for my crime. I already did my time. I paid for
You're in tune to World Jam Global Radio, and it's another edition of Issues Today. My name is Kervin, Julien, and my guest today is going to be Sandra Rigobert.
It was all about survival. It was do or die. I had too many rivals. I was too young and foolish to stay in school. I learned my lessons in the street. There was not a man I couldn't.
You know, education is has been very problematic for so many people. I can remember a time way back when where troublesome children were either expelled or excluded and put in isolation.
No gun in my hand.
And back in the day, and I'm talking about way back in the day, they had no means to identify dyslexia. And sometimes you get a kid who was sat down in the back of the classroom being very disruptive for simple reasons. I know children who were long-sighted or short-sighted and just couldn't see what was on the blackboard. And so in the end, they didn't know how to reach out and tell a teacher that they were struggling, and so therefore got themselves into trouble. Then you've got children who can't read or can't see letters the right way or whatever, and they're struggling. And back in the day, there was no real way of identifying some of these problems that have caused people some trouble and strife for years.
I had to repent. I must admit, I was doing all kind of stupid shit. Now,
but today we're going to talk to somebody
I've gotten older, the life I used to
who's going to shed some light
I was young and dumb. My brain was so numb. I was a real Forrest Gump. But I was
on how she managed to find a difference, to make a difference,
I was the real Terminator.
in spite of the difficulties that she faced.
Shoot you up and spit you out like a
Stand by for another expose on World Jam Global Radio's Issues Today.
The opening statements are going on right now. He could be facing life in prison.
already did my time.
I want to say a big thank you to my producer, Teresa, for all the hard work that she's been putting in. And believe you me, we've got some shows lined up coming up in June. This is obviously the last one for May, but June is already booked up, trust me. Next week, I think we've got Andy Christopherson from Burka Media
Did my time.
with an Albuquerque update.
Already did my time. I paid for my crime. I'm trying to get this felony off my back so I can get my life on track and have the right to vote and live like an ordinary citizen again. This is my message to all of my friends in the pen, statewide.
We do have some top-notch shows lined up for you.
Not a man I couldn't beat. I was good with my hands and very quick on my feet. I was swimming in women. I had girls all over the street. I was getting money. Life was so sweet. Now things have changed. The whole game has been rearranged. I'm a changed man. Don't need no gun in my hand. It ain't about being no gangster. Life is too short to spend it all in jail.
Don't forget, you can also join me tomorrow morning for another edition of Church Before Church, the Wake Up Everybody Sunday Gospel Show.
Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
Haven't quite decided what my gospel theme is going to be, but I can guarantee you it's going to be hot.
I paid for my crime. Already,
Followed by a full lineup of World Jam Global Radio DJs and presenters.
already did my time. I paid for my crime. I was a drug dealer, sold more drugs than Superfly, but I never got high on my own supply. I'm not proud of what I had to do.
Whatever you're doing,
My story to you.
get the kettle on, get your coffee ready, because this is going to be a very intriguing debate indeed.
Now sit back and think it over since I've gotten older. The life I used to live, I wouldn't do it again. I was young and dumb, my brain was so numb. I was a real Forrest Gump, but I was nobody's chump. Me and Billy the Kid had a lot in common. I was the real Terminator, much
I
more
want to say a big thank you to all the World Jam Global Radio managers and
like a
technicians who just keep us live.
already did my time. Paid for my crime.
Don't forget, you can join us live on www.worldjamglobalradio.com.
My crime.
Or you can just simply follow us on TuneIn app.
Statements are going on right now.
Won't get the visual, but you'll definitely get the sound.
Prison.
And I know many of you just wait for it to be recorded and posted on Facebook and other social media sites. It'll be ready and available at some point this evening.
Trying to cope with this living hell.
But with no further ado, I think it's time to welcome my guest.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Hey, Sharon, how are we doing? Sharon,
Hi.
Sandra. Why did I say
Hi,
Sharon?
Kervin. I don't know.
No, we were just talking about Sharon. That's why.
Yeah.
Okay, but Sandra Rigobert, how are you? And thank you
I'm
for
very
joining
well,
us.
thank you very much. Thank you.
And
very well, thank you.
Just before we came live, we were talking about the fact that we've known each other for years, even though we can't remember, but we do. We've met.
Yes.
We have many people in common.
Yes.
And we would have frequented many places together where we would have actually spent time in each other's company.
Yeah.
Many years ago.
Strange how life is, isn't it?
Isn't it just? It comes around us full circle. But
Yes.
Sandra, would you just start off, first and foremost, just by telling our audience a little bit about you, who you are, where you're from, what you do, how long you've done it for, that kind of thing.
Okay, so who I am. I'm a middle, I like to say nearly halfway to 100 lady that lives in the UK. I've lived here now for all of my life. I never really moved away anywhere else. I studied in the UK. Most of my family's here in the UK. I've lived in London literally all of my life. And most of my experiences are here. We've travelled extensively as a family, but all over the world, but only short breaks.
Right.
Now what I do, because I've done several things in my life as a big person after, you eventually leave school and have to go out in the big world.
No, shocking.
Yeah, I've had several big careers, and what I do now is I'm an educator and an encourager. But previous to that, when I left school, I did anything that I could do, such as making bread in a Turkish factory, factory cleaning. I used to work in the fashion industry, so initially I started doing something called cotton cleaning. So you literally cut the cottons off the garments that the machinists had already finished making. The skilled people had already finished making. You'd cut the threads off and make sure it was no strings hanging off and all the buttons were on and that kind of stuff. Okay. In the fashion industry, I've worked as in a shop selling French perfumes, department store. I've attempted to do clerical work and admin, which was quite funny, very interesting. I got myself into a lot of trouble there, and I did that for solicitors. I ran a shop for a little while. Myself and my sister went into a business together, and we opened a shop selling male leather goods in about the year 2000, after I'd done my first degree. And we thought we were fashionistas, and we went to Paris and had a shop in Camden selling leather goods, and a couple of stalls in Spitalfields Market and Portobello Market. And then that didn't work out very well. More finances than anything, and just lack of knowledge of what to do in a business when a business gets to a certain level and you need to expand what you need to do. So for fear of getting ourselves into trouble, we shut up shop, and I'm proud to say we shut that business up without owing any money, which is quite an achievement apparently. And then what did we do? We went into youth offending, and I think when I went into that work is when life became more interesting for me. And I worked in that industry and really loved it for about 6-7 years. I think that's the longest career life I've had. I've heard of people having 30 years and 25 years. That was my longest, other than this now, where I've started working for myself when I was made redundant from there. And I've done a second degree, and then I went into teaching then. And kind of stuck around in teaching since 2009, 2010, I think, when I finally 2011 I graduated, and I've stayed in teaching ever since. And it's been a funny journey. However, it's brought me to who I am now, and it's made me very passionate about certain things. And my ability and my difference is one of them. And meeting lots of people that are similar to me has been, and this has all been recent, since the second university and becoming a teacher, that I've met more people that are dyslexic or autistic or Asperger's, all those differences that make them interesting people, but not the norm. And that's pretty much what I do now. I'm just involved in that kind of arena, in that area, as an educator.
Okay. And well, it sounds like you have been very, very busy indeed.
To say the least. I had a family in the middle of that as well.
Wow. How many children have you got, Sandra?
I've got four birth children and one child from my marriage, where my husband came to me with. When we met, he already had children. Okay. 2 children, 2 girls, yeah. And
teaching is what you've rested on now, and you say that's what you do now. Do you enjoy the teaching?
Oh, yeah. Not so much going in and teaching the typical subjects, your maths, your English. Not that I would ever teach any of those, but my discipline, my specialism in teaching as a secondary school teacher is design technology. Okay. And that has 3 disciplines in it. That has textiles, so you're learning fabric and cloth and different fabrics, different surfaces. There's your food technology, they call it. So very obvious, you're learning about food and nutrition and cooking, and resistant materials, which is like design technology. And that's the part that I was trained in, because I already had an understanding of food, and I was from the rag trade already, from fashion. That was my first degree, fashion design. So I thought, if I'm going to go into teaching, and I had the opportunity to do it, I did the resistant material, the RM side of things. So I don't so much teach those now, but I more go and I do small groups of educational talks or assemblies or those kind of things, and I go and do talks to schools as a way of encouraging children to not think that school is the nightmare that they do believe it is. If you usually speak to any young people, they're complaining. They're not usually saying fantastic things about going to school. They're usually moaning that it's too hard, they don't understand something, and they want to give up. So they towel in and give up. And they're young children. They're secondary school, but they're years 8, 9, and 10. As it starts to get harder, as the pressure comes on, the more work that's involved, the more they're more like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to miss subjects out, or not do exams, or it's all, not all, but there are the exceptions, and they're fun to work with as well. But mainly I go in and I speak about, well, this is my life and this is what happened to me. Yeah? Yes, you can come out the other side, but you have to have certain things, and you've got to be, upbeat, positive, all those things, motivate yourself, encourage yourself. And it's relentless and consistent, and you just have to keep going at it if it's something your heart feels it wants to do. If you feel passionate about it, it's one of those things when you wake up in the morning, you're not rolling about thinking, oh, I don't want to get up in 10 minutes. You're thinking, oh, I've got this task to do, and I'm going to phone these people, and I'm going to speak to this person, or I'm going into this school to speak to these children about, let's do our best, do it when we're doing our exams, or that kind of thing.
That's just amazing work. Now, before we move on, I just want to stay here for a second, because there's a reason why I want to do this. You talked about earlier on, just a short while ago, when you were talking about you've got these kids that are always complaining, wanting to give up, throw the towel in and stuff like that, and you go in and you give encouraging talks, assemblies and that kind of thing, just basically to encourage them, support them, motivate them, and that kind of thing. But that's always been the case, as from the beginning of the history of school. That's what kids have done. And going back to our days when we were going at school, there wasn't anybody to support that, really, was there? We had our peers. I can remember peers trying to encourage us in such a way, but we never had anybody from the outside world who had gone through anything, who had been through anything, being able to come back in and say, well, hang on a minute, you guys really need to hold it together because... did you find that yourself?
At that when I was at school?
Yes, absolutely.
Was there anybody?
Yeah.
No. I do remember one talk we had, but it wasn't in relation to this kind of. An external service came into school. I never forget it because I was an overweight child at school. That part was frightful, and add it together with not being able to read when you're a teenager. Yeah. It was quite horrible. So I remember a lady came in and we had a lesson on food and nutrition. And my mum said that literally it must have been the very following evening I came in from school after that lesson. She said, I just stopped eating bread and I cut out all sugar. Because we could have what we wanted at home. Our auntie had a sweet shop, so there was just sweets galore at home and chocolate. And I remember we used to make these sandwiches. They are absolutely obscenely they're not good for you at all. Please don't follow this if you're listening. But we used to make these white bread sandwiches. You know, just if you're Jamaican, you call it sandwich. Used to make these white bread sandwiches, and we used to put butter on, full fat butter on, as thick as you could get it. And this is 2 slices of bread. And then we've got the refined white sugar. They call it crystallized. It's a drug now, apparently, refined white sugar, because it is so addictive and so not good for you. And we'd get this and we'd smack as much sugar on, and then you tap off the excess, smack it together and eat this as a meal, as something to eat, as a treat. I know. So I stopped doing those. And my mother said I think it was just before the summer holidays, she said by the summer of the holidays, all my weight had fallen off. And I came back to school and people were like, what in the bleep happened to Sandra? Because I looked so different.
But then you obviously paid attention to the advice.
But that was the only advice that I got that was useful from school. Yeah, that was pretty much it. That lady, I would love to get hold her and shake her hand and see if she's doing the same sort of work and get involved with her, because I think they need that talk again at school. But there was nobody that came in and did any encouraging talks with you. If you had to be highlighted for somebody to come in, somebody would have to say, well, this student, there's a difficulty here. And there wasn't any of those systems or nothing like that ever happened. I went to North Pad School in West London. I don't know that. Yeah,
you don't know. It's in West London on the Harrow Road.
Yeah,
it doesn't exist anymore. It eventually became North Westminster. They partnered with Maida Vale, another girls' school, and became another school, and etc. And it was where the very first school steel band ever to play in the United Kingdom was birthed.
Okay.
Because I helped birth that with a guy called Zach Herbert, who was our teacher, and he was also my neighbour where I lived. And when I saw him playing, I asked him if I could get him into the school. Would he come and teach? And I actually brought North Pad on strike until they agreed to bring Zach in to teach us music. Wow, yeah, you do have to be like really passionate about something to bring about a change. I loved music, and what they were trying to teach us in music in school just wasn't my cup. It just didn't do it for me.
I can well imagine. Yeah.
So we brought that in. But going back to then, I remember when I started secondary school, we had 1A, 1 Alpha, 1B, 1C, right? And 1C was probably those that were just really weren't too clever. Right?
I must be in a class like that.
So 1A and 1 Alpha was 1A was the top, 1 Alpha was the second top, and 1B. Yeah. If you was in any of those three, right? Yeah. Then you was really doing well, and you had all the best opportunities. You had the best teachers. You were learning the best things. But anything under that, right? Then you had 1C, we had 1D, we had 1E, and then we had 1P. Right? There was a massive gap from the E to the P. Nothing in between. And the 1P right, was down for all the guys that just weren't gonna cut it. They were the troublemakers. They were the guys that couldn't read, the guys that didn't want to read, right?
It was literally everybody went in there. It didn't matter what the problem was.
There was no luxury afforded to them. They were given a class at the back of the school somewhere where nobody even knew that they existed, and they just took part in their day, and then they went home, none the wiser, and no investment given into those kids whatsoever. And many of those children turned out to be drug dealers, gangsters, criminals, and whatever, because of what the educational system invested in them in the first place. Now, I'm getting somewhere. I'm going somewhere with this, because
I can see.
As you say, you now go into schools and you give talks, positive talks, motivational talks, encouraging talks. We never had anything like that back then.
Nope.
If you were in 1P or 1E, then that's where you were, and that's where you stayed. And every
That's
year,
where you stayed.
every year you went up. Right, you went up to one of those classes that kept you in that same environment, with a teacher that couldn't teach, a teacher that couldn't be bothered to teach, and didn't have the acumen to teach, and furthermore didn't care if you learned.
Yes.
Right. There was
biggest sin,
and that was the biggest sin. It wasn't so much that they didn't teach; is that they didn't care if you learned, right? So back then, today we have all of these labels that they're putting on kids nowadays. ADHD and all the rest, and all these behavioural issues that they're talking about, and the more that people play up to that, is the more labels that they're giving them. But back then we had problem kids too.
Yes.
Right. But these problem kids were just isolated, put into the back classes somewhere, and just left to be failed, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we have a system, an educational system, that is almost forced to engage with kids as they learn. The educational system is a totally different thing to what we knew, right? And so therefore, right, and I'm probably jumping ahead a little bit again now, is because what you probably went through as a child at school would have been probably totally unidentified, unrecognizable, and unable to be supported. But you still had to go through school. So,
yes.
So we're going to get to the point now, because you sound with your 2 degrees and all the other things that you've got, and all the other achievements that you've got, and the work that you do with youth offending and being a teacher, a fully fledged, intelligent woman of society, right? For want of using a better phrase, right?
Yeah.
But you
at least I've had an education, don't I?
Yeah, you had to go through some stuff to get there, right?
I had to drag myself through some hot coals to get there.
Amongst all of this stuff that you've done, right here and now, you've now written Dyslexic, the Silent Difference, the New You.
Yeah.
And when I started to read through this, I realized you weren't talking about somebody else, was you?
No.
You were talking about you. You with the 2 degrees, right? Which is probably nigh on impossible in anybody else's standards, right? 2 degrees, you're a teacher teaching in school, right? With ailments and issues that most people get isolated for, and would have back in our day. And in fact you did. So before we go into the book, when you start on a book, your first chapter says at the beginning or in the beginning, and your in the beginning is 2013. Well, I don't want to go to 2013. That ain't my in the beginning for you. My in the beginning, I want to find out, what was your struggle at school? How did you cope? When did you first realize that you had a problem, or did you never think it was a problem? You just thought that you just weren't no good. I just thought
I wasn't any good. I didn't know it was a problem. I didn't know it had a name. I didn't know I could be supported for it. I had no idea, no clue. It was just life, and it was rubbish.
Okay. So talk me through what it was that you saw on a day-to-day basis as you went into school, you sat down at your desk, and then you were given this stuff. What was it that you saw that made it so difficult for you? Even though you didn't understand what it was or how it affected you, what was it that you saw, you visualized, that you found almost insurmountable as something to overcome?
Yeah, there were a couple of times where I actually, because I was a very quiet child, you were initially, when you introduced the show, you were talking about children that have learning differences, and they're usually at the back of the class making some sort of trouble with themselves. But I was at the back of the class, but I didn't make any trouble. I was silent. You never got a peep out of me. I was considered to be a good student. unless there were a couple of times teachers pressed my buttons, and I was so indignant about the way that they treated us as a group of students. I retaliated, and I remember throwing a chair at a teacher from the back of the room where I was. I was so angry. She kept throwing me because I wanted to play an instrument. It was a music lesson. And I was dying to, every time we had music, I'd be, before we get in the morning, I'm thinking, oh, we've got music. I'd like to play the trumpet today, or I'd like to play the drums, or I'd like to play the saxophone, or I'd like to play the violin. We were not allowed to play those instruments. And when I say we, I say the children of colour. Yeah. That were in the class. We had to go at the back, and we got the glockenspiel, the tambourine, the triangle, the little funny shaky thing that was made out of plastic.
I can totally identify with you. And I was
so angry. I was like, enough of this, and this is not fair, and I threw the chair. And that's the only kind of time that I had like a mad moment. Other than that, I sat at the back of I went to all my lessons, as many lessons as I could tolerate, I could stomach. Because I bunked a lot. So I went to as many lessons as I could stand, and always ended up at the back of the room, and they'd give you things to write, copy off the board, or you bring your book in, you'd open your book. You've got nothing in the darn thing. A few scratches, because I'd always attempt to do something, but I couldn't keep up. It would always have to be copying. And if you can imagine that you can't read a word and they've written, say, a couple of sentences on the board, and so each word, you're looking up for each letter because you can't even remember the letter before that one. You don't have that cognitive ability with words yet. So they've written implement. So you're going to look up and see I and write I. Look up and see M and write M. Look up and see P and write P. Do you understand? Yeah. This is how slow I was. So I would attempt something, but it was pages of one line, 2 words. That was it. They'd give you something to read through. You'd have to do maybe a worksheet, answer some questions, or read this and write something in your book. I mean, just hilarious. But
surely, as they looked through your work, as they started to mark your work, as the lessons progressed, was there no picking out of what you was doing or what you needed to do to improve?
No, we didn't have that. There was, when I was at school, there wasn't any of that. I don't remember my books ever being marked. So in
other words, you were just being allowed to fail.
Yes. Now I'm looking back at it. Yes, I believe I was teachers would look at you and think, well, you're not gonna amount to it. What am I going to invest into you? You can't read a word, and just walk past you and maybe talk to the students on the road in front of you. They seldom talk to anybody on your road. They usually talk to the students. They'd walk past. I remember two particular teachers, two teachers in particular, that would walk around the class as you're doing your work, and they'd walk past and look into your book, see you've not done anything, look at you, and then walk away, and then go to the next student and go along, but not interact with you about, well, you've not done anything. Why haven't you written anything? What don't you understand? There was nothing like that, if that's what you're getting at.
No, you see,
yes.
For me, I was the kid on the other side, you see. I was one of the very few that actually was top of my class in reading, spelling. I was at top of my class, and it was unprecedented as a child of colour in my school. It wasn't the norm, but I was very good. So I always sat near the front, but all my friends sat at the back, or they were in 1P and 1E. So I'd want to get out of the class so I can go and be with them. And when it came time to be in the playground, I weren't with the kids in 1A and 1 Alpha. I was with the kids in 1P and 1E and 1D, and that's where I was. Right. You know, and when it came before school and after school, those are the kids that I walked to school with, and those are the kids that I walked home with. Those are the kids that I went to the park with, the ones that were in 1P and 1D and 1E. The guys that were in 1A and 1 Alpha, they were, which is why I quickly got into, you know how I feel. So I always remember the kids that were behind me, or the kids that were in those other classes, not actually getting any attention whatsoever. And when you talk about music, I can totally relate to that, because up until the time that we brought the steel band into the school, most of those musical instruments we weren't allowed to play. And I can't remember this song, but we were playing guitar one day. Our music teacher we had 2 music teachers. There was Mr. Selhurst and Miss Hasenfuss. And Miss Hasenfuss was a piano player, and Mr. Selhurst was a guitar player. So in our guitar lessons, we were sat there, and there was 3 black guys sat down in this class with 2 white guys, and they were teaching us to play. And it's like one of them cowboy songs. Dong 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 dong.
Yeah, so it's got a little part there.
Yeah,
yeah, I think I know the one.
You know the one, but that's what. And we were sitting there, and we was like, no, and we were trying to find a way to reggae it up, or
Yes.
and we got chucked out.
No, you're gonna play it as teacher says.
We got chucked out because so that was and I remember because during the breakup of primary school and secondary school, there'd been like they used to do those summer schools, and they're still doing some sort of that now, where kids club where you can go into school, etc.
Yeah, they do have them. Some places they cost a lot of money now, though. Yeah, they used to be almost free when we went.
Well, they were free back then.
Yeah.
And there was a guy who was teaching still band at the summer school where I was, and so I spent a couple of weeks learning, and we played at a presentation at the end of the summer club to the parents. So I got a feel for that. So when I got into this situation with my second, and it wasn't even the first year, it was the second year that we started to rebel. Right? I remember walking down Rosewood Avenue down by Lisson Green Estate, and Zach Herbert was tuning up a pan outside his house.
Okay.
And I knew his sons because I played with the sound system with his sons, but his sons had never mentioned that their dad did the steel band thing. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So I spoke with Zach because I'd been to the house before, and I just mentioned if we can get you into the school, and so I went back to the school and I mentioned it, and they torpedoed it out like it was non-existent. And so I was a very popular kid at school, so I used my popularity and I brought the whole school out on strike.
It's very popular.
We brought the whole school out on strike for a week and a half, and then they let Zach come in, and we became the first. We won the carnival in '76.
Yeah. Okay.
We did nationwide. We did Magpie.
Wow.
Yeah, we did all of that.
I must have really watched you.
Yeah.
Magpie.
We did all of that in the '70s. We were the first school steel band to ever go sort of like public that way. And Zach was the pioneer of that. He started at our school, then he went to Pimlico and Brixton, and then it started to spread to some other schools. And now steel band in schools is a very big thing, or can be a very big thing. And he still teaches it in London now. Wow. But suffice to say, children of
you
colour...
understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah, absolutely, because we really struggled to get a grip of anything that was cultural or stuff that we could relate to. And unless you were someone like me who was assertive, and some would even say a bit bullish, you got nowhere at all. And all these other kids stayed in 1P. And here's the thing. Some of the best players that we had in the steel band ended up coming from the 1Ps and the 1Es and 1Ds.
Yeah, very creative.
And the kids that played the best football came from the 1Ps and the 1Ds. The kids that represented the school on the football pitch came from those classes. They might not have been great at academic, but man, you could see them in the playground. You could see their athleticism. You could see their competitive edge. And had there been some investment in their education way back then, these kids could have actually amounted to a lot more today than they ever did. So I'm with you at that. So now let's get to your book, shall we? Because now we've done the nostalgia bit, and believe you me, I'm totally with you. I can understand how you got left behind with that, but somehow you managed to come through that and find a way. And the thing that you found yourself to be struggling with was dyslexia. So please, in the most simple layman's terms, describe dyslexia to our audience.
Oh gosh, in the most simple layman terms, it's shall I say, for me, in general, we'll do a general. In general, it's a difficulty reading or spelling. That can manifest itself in loads of different ways for different people that have dyslexia. So it could be that your eye doesn't follow the words properly. It could be that, and they call that something like a word blindness of words. It could be that, and that's a higher level. So you know letters. That's a good thing to do if you want to read. So you might have letter blindness. You don't recognize the letters at all, so you don't know what they are. And then when they're strung to string what each one sounds like with the letters next to it, and then to string it together to make the word. It can be a neurological issue where you know letters, you can string them together, but then to make a sentence is an issue for you. I mean, there are so many different ways that it can manifest itself with people. For me, it's more, I'd be more general about it. I can read now. Initially, obviously, like I said, I couldn't, but even now I have issue with, if you give me some text to read now in an environment with people, so it becomes social. An
anxiety.
Yes, and then you can't read one word after the next. Your eyes won't follow. They jump around the page. Some people, the words actually move around the page. That's what you hear a lot. People say, "Oh, it's when the words move around your page when you're dyslexic." They'll think it's just that one thing, but it could either be that you just experience that, where the words move around the page, or you're experiencing the words moving around the page and not being able to know what the letters sound like, and then string the letters together to get the sound of the word that you need together. Do you understand? Or it could be just one of either of those issues for a person. So it really does vary quite in a large aspect for each individual person that's dyslexic. But as people are different, because you're not the same as your brother, and your brother's not the same as you. You'll have traits that are similar, but you will be different. And it's the same for dyslexia and any other learning difference. And I think that's the best way I can explain it to people. I hope that you understand.
Oh, absolutely. I remember. I have two stepkids, and Aaron, the oldest of the two, what year was he born in now? 88. So he is 29 this year. And Aaron, when he was in primary school, he was very problematic, very troublesome in the classroom, and they were very, very close. To actually putting him out.
Yes.
Right.
That's a typical story. Yeah.
And it wasn't dyslexia, but I'm getting there. With Aaron, the problem he had was was it short-sighted or long-sighted? He couldn't see the blackboard. Right?
Yeah.
He needed glasses, basically.
Yeah.
But he didn't know he needed glasses.
No.
All he knew was he couldn't see what they were putting in front of him.
Yeah.
Right? So because he couldn't see what they were putting in front of him, he became disruptive.
Yes.
And so what I'm trying to get to is that there are many children who are either dyslexic or had some form of learning disability. For want of a better word, it's a common label that we use now.
Yeah.
And because they couldn't understand why they couldn't comprehend what they were doing, they found another way to entertain themselves.
That's right.
Because whatever happens, they've still got to go to school. They've still got to come to this place every day. They've got no option until they get expelled. They're sent here every day to go through this painful ritual.
It is a bit, actually.
Daily,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Sit down in this room. You put this stuff in front of me, and I just can't see it. Right? And you're going to be standing there telling me, why ain't you done this, and why ain't you done this, or do this and do that. And I'm sitting there, and I don't know how to tell you that I can't see it. I don't know how to tell you that I don't understand it. And this is what many kids were suffering with. And it was only up until, and I can't even remember why we did. I think we suggested it. And then they did the eye test and found out that he was, whatever it was, long-sighted or short-sighted, and needed glasses. But here's the problem. By the time they identified what his issue was, he had already created a habitual behavioral habit.
Yes.
And now that he could see, it's, you know, the resentment that he felt for how he was treated when he couldn't see was the bridge that stopped him from going across the other side. They'd already alienated him. They'd already pointed the finger at him. They'd already, you know, condemned him. They'd already labeled him, and they'd already ostracized him. They'd already done all what they needed to do to him in that time. That it was now that they couldn't draw him back into the fold anymore.
No.
So he's now got this new ability, but he's got, in his awareness, he has no use for it.
No.
So he just carried on doing what he was doing before. I mean, you know, unfortunately for him, he continued going the wrong way. But a lot of children have been through that. Right?
Yes. As I've come to read, through writing the book, yes, I've come to meet lots of them, or speak to them.
So without naming names, let's do some case studies. So tell us about a couple of people that you have interviewed, that you've researched. Tell us a bit about their story, where they came from, what they did, and you don't have to name them unless they want to be named, unless they're named in the book. But let's just go through that and give people an idea of where people come from, and maybe we can have a couple of case studies. One where they went bad and they stayed bad, and maybe one where they turned it around and used it for better.
Okay.
If we can, yeah. The ball's in your court, Sandra.
Yeah, I can't think of anybody that had difficulties at school that went bad and stayed bad. There are a lot that went bad and came back good. In particular, a guy that struggled at school. So, you know, we've just gone through this, what a lot of people experience when they've got a learning difference in school and it's not being recognised and nothing's done about it. And he was quite thuggish. Grew up on the wrong side of the track, was arrested a few times. I think he did some time in prison. And it was way into his late 30s where I suppose he'd gotten into trouble one too many times. He went overseas as well, and he was quite a bit of a thug over there as well, and came back here. But yeah, he turned his life around. A number of things helped him to do that. I think part of it was a diagnosis, but there were other elements as well in his life that had happened. You know, he'd had children, and he wanted to be part of their life and not out of it all the time, and that kind of thing. He wanted to be closer with his family, his sisters, and his mother. And in combination of all those things, as well as the diagnosis, he's turned his life around, and he does. He used to work with one of those big companies that work with children that gangs and guns.
Okay.
So he used to go out and speak to a lot of the gangs in the community. I think
make
them whole peace and things like that, so they didn't, you know.
You're probably talking about somebody that's already been on my show, aren't you?
No, I'm not actually.
Okay.
No, I'm not. So it's must be just a story that lots of people have experienced, but no, it's not. It's a gentleman from South London. I was going to ask you if you'd interview him actually.
Who's Sheldon?
No, it's not him.
Okay,
it's a guy from the UK.
Okay.
The English guy. Yeah.
Okay. No, I will gladly interview him, but I do know that I know Sheldon Thompson did a lot of work with gangs, and especially over in South London. So.
Yeah. So he's through the experience he's had, he's turned himself around now, and he does a lot of community work. Goes in and speaks to young people. A lot of after-school clubs. He's trying to set up a tutoring service for young people when they're, you know, at this stage in their education where they're going into their SATs and their GCSEs, to support them in that. So, you know, that's one. I can't think of anyone that went bad and stayed in prison. I know people that were not diagnosed, so we have no absolute truth that they did have a difference, but what we what we do know is that they had the similar experiences we just discussed in school, always at the back or in those other classes where, no support was given to them, and nothing was said about them not being able to do the work that's been given to them in school. And I do know that they've gone into taking illegal substances. They've gone into menial jobs, if any jobs at all, and they have died young. So they've died in their 40s, in their 30s, because they've lived a hard life. They've drunk, they've done all those things. They've not eaten well. They've not had the love and support around them. All those things. They never came out of that terrible situation at school. They just kind of continued to live it, but as an adult kind of thing. And they're not here anymore. But like I said, those ones that had no definite diagnosis, that somebody said that they've gone through this assessment and they were dyslexic, or they were Asperger's, or they were, dyscalculia, or do you understand? Yeah. So, but yes, those are the two that spring to mind here and now. But in all of that, what I've found with those people that have come out the other side is there is a, what can we call it, a strength, because it's quite difficult to always be the feeling that you're always being kicked. And somebody's
kept down.
Kept down, and that somebody from above there's water coming down on you and someone's peeing on you, kind of thing, all the time, every day. It's hard to get past that feeling of just being down and think, well, I could try, and what can I do to improve my situation, my life. I think for a lot of people that I've spoken to and read about, or kind of contacted online and spoken to them through emails and that kind of thing, is that it goes beyond the diagnosis is quite helpful. Going to see some professional that can sit you down and go through that cognitive test that they do with you. Firstly, because it tells you, it concretes that, well, I'm not an idiot. Then, because you go, for a lot of them, you go through your life thinking that what people have said to you at school about you is true. You are an idiot, and you are stupid, and you're not going to be able to become anything. That diagnosis, when they get it later in life, supports them in, okay, then, so what can I do then to better make my life more pleasant for me and my family and my friends, or to make a family, because sometimes, a lot of the times, they're not with anyone because they are not difficult people, but we're different people to live with, because we're very creative people, you tend to find. And whether it's say, for instance, Richard Branson with his creativity in making businesses, or Rembrandt in making art, your creative thing, you have to be a person that's able to give and take with them, because we can be quite just focused on that thing that we really love, and maybe be neglectful of people around you. So,
can you remember what sorts of trouble you got into in the classroom? Because you couldn't read, or you couldn't see what you needed to do. Could you remember the sorts of trouble that you got into?
None at all. My friend said to me, I literally don't remember this, and when I was writing the book, my dear friend, who I've got a lot of my friends that I still know now from primary school, and she said to me, she was reminding me of the dance class that we were in, and it was called the dance class. And she said to me, don't you remember you used to throw tantrums? And I said, I have no recollection of this. I do remember, like I said, with that teacher, with the music instrument, I remember that. But I don't remember any other time that I would have thrown a tantrum, but apparently I did. And that's why I was in this class. But I can't really think of any.
Well, I think, you know, 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 I think, Before we go on any further, let me just on a positive note, some of the biggest names in the world who have been successful with dyslexia: Steven Spielberg, Richard Branson, Tom Cruise, Jim Carrey, Anthony Hopkins,
Yes.
and Cher.
Yes.
These were people that were all dyslexic and still became successful. So I suppose even in the title of your book, the new you, dyslexia doesn't have to hinder you from being successful in life. And in your book, you start off by saying that you started to read after you left formal education at 17. So how did that come about? Why did you choose? I mean, you've gone through school, you made a real hash of it, right, so to speak. Everybody has told you that you're dunce and you're down there in 1P, you ain't going to make nothing, right? You're never going to amount to anything anyway, so you might as well just stay down there with the rest of them, right? Yeah. But at the age of 17, you take it upon yourself to re-educate yourself on something that you've had an opportunity to educate yourself on all the time, according to what the education authorities might think. But what inspired you, what motivated you to want to learn reading, especially reading all over again?
Yes, I think I was a little bit older than 17. I'd had my first child by the time I was 18. So they get to school and they have books that they've got to read. And I think that's what prompted me initially, because they bring a book home and they want you to read the book to them. And they're very simple books, because they're little children. They're 3 and they're 5 and 6 and 7 that they start reading at school. And it was that made me think I really need to do something about being able to read to my child. I should be able to read to my child. And then when I had my daughter, and they were both kind of waving books at me, I didn't take it very far though when I was 17. I didn't take any extra lessons. I just thought I need to do something to improve myself. So I attempted reading things that I needed to read. I didn't buy magazines or anything like that. When I really thought I have to get a hold of this and I have to get control of it is when my daughter came and she wanted me to read to her. And then my son needed me to help him with homework. And I was lost. I didn't know how to help either of them because I couldn't read what my son had to do properly. And I wasn't very good with reading the book to my daughter. And my sister at the time, she was now starting education herself. She's going back into further education. And she decided to go and do law. She was very excited about going to do law, and we were all very excited that she was going to go and do law. Caribbean parents are like, they were super excited. They're going to have a solicitor in the family, or a lawyer. So it was all very exciting time. And she was like, well, don't forget, I was just doing very ordinary menial jobs. Nothing wrong with them, but they didn't fulfill me. I was constantly miserable. So when you have that situation, a family member's going off to do very well for themselves, and she suggested, well, why don't you try to do education? And I thought, I don't know. All I could do was the sewing thing. So if I was going to be able to do a course, at that time I wanted to so bad, but I just thought I won't be able to. They'll give me stuff to read and spell and all that, and I won't be able to do it. But like I said, the children, really wanting to support them more and not wanting to be where I was. I wanted to do more things with my life. I wanted to travel. I wanted to just experience life in a bigger and better way. So I went to my local college at the time and managed to sign up for a sewing course. And with that, I thought, oh no, I've got to read. I've got to be able to read. So I started. I don't know why, because I've never read them before in my life. But I said, let me read the newspaper, and it came to me after when I said, let me read the newspaper. It's because it's just small parts, pieces of text. The stories are small, short. You don't have to read lots and lots, and simple words in them. And I thought, well, I need to record what I've got, what I don't know, so I can go back in the dictionaries. We already had dictionaries in the house. I had them for the children. I bought a massive encyclopedia set for my son when he was like 3 or something. So we had those in the house. So I bought a little notebook, and to go to college, I had to take the bus. And my daughter came with me as well because I got her into the nursery there. It all kind of just fell in place. I think once you want something, they keep talking about these things, these actors when they're doing short interviews and actors and actresses and film star and musicians and singers and all that. And public speakers talk about that thing that where you want something to happen and the universe sets things in motion. So, well, I wanted to learn to read. Well, how can I do that? I have no idea. It's not like I read something that said, well, do it this way. It would work out easier for you. I just kind of cobbled things together myself to make it work. So I could learn to read and then help the children. I didn't put a time limit on it. Just started reading newspapers on the bus on the way to college. I dropped my daughter off. It was literally in the same building. The nursery is at the bottom, and we went up to the fashion industry, the fashion department, and I did a City and Guilds in in clothing manufacture, which I knew about already because I'd worked in factories for so long, doing those menial jobs, cotton and those kind of things. So yeah, I've lost my train of thought now. Where was I? Oh yes, so to learning to read. So so I was going there. I was reading on the bus, and that's how I kind of taught myself. I'd make notes of each words I didn't know how to read, go back in the evening, check them, and do my best to help the children. And I did that for the entire time that I was at Waltham Forest College at the time. And that was about 3 years. And there I did sort of so many little courses. I did the clothing manufacture. I did the... I did 2 A-levels there. Forgot those. They taught me into doing 2 A-levels and at HND, I think it was, I did.
How frightening was it to do? I mean,
gosh, to go to I don't know how I managed to complete the form, because I remember there was a form there to fill out. I remember when I first went, you had to fill out a form. I could do the first bit, like I said. I could always do. When I left school, I could do my name, knew my full name written. I knew if I saw it, knew if I heard it spoken, and I could write it. And then same again with my address, and same again with my date of birth. But then all the other things that they would have been asking me, I don't know how I completed that form. I do remember there were people there to help you, and I do remember sitting down and having a session with somebody to get the form completed. And then the idea of doing all these other courses, it wasn't something that I would have chosen for myself. It would have been just to do the City and Guilds, because I thought with the City and Guilds I can get a proper sewing job then. Yeah, rather than just doing the jobs, because they're the skilled people in the fashion industry. You see, pattern cutters and machinists are the one, to the arm. So I wanted to be a machinist, so that's why I did that course. But then whilst I was there, the lovely ladies, one of the the instructors there, a lovely lady, one of the tutors, Jennifer, and Penny, who was the course director, they kept suggesting, why don't you do this? We'll help you. Well, do this course. We'll help you. Yeah, because they saw that there was something wrong, but it was never, oh, right, we can see you've got something wrong. We need to do this to support you. Do you understand? So they kept asking me, and I kept going, oh, all right then, if you'll help me. So I did the 2 A levels with their help. But don't forget, my reading was improving as I was going along as well, because the more you introduce text and having to read and spell to most, not all, most dyslexic people, they will cognitively pick it up and retain it and be able to, share it with people. Other than that's pretty much how it happened. And like I said, my reading, my spelling was improving. It's not the best now, even now, but it's improved immensely. By far, it's amazing how much it did improve in that short period of time, and how I managed to take it further. And then they kept, once I'd done the I can't remember what course it was, a diploma or something, I think. They said, look, we're sending some students off to university, which I never even thought about. It was never ever something that I could do, university. It was always something for other people to do. And I really had to think hard, because I thought, oh, they're going to really, because you've got to do research papers, and when you kind of look at like the syllabus and what you've got to do, 10,000 word dissertation, I was like, me, no, I won't make it. I won't be able to do it. But I did. They helped me to write up all the documents you need to do, because you've got this massive UCAS paper. It was at the time. I don't know what it is now, that you had to complete, and I got support with the guys for that. And then, but once I was at uni, it still wasn't anything that anybody said to them that, oh, this student is very talented, because I was a very good drawer and a very good innovator of different fashion ideas. So hence they pushed me on. I really am thankful to them for that, because I would have just stopped at the City and Guilds. And then, but once I went to uni, there was no kind of transition. Well, this student is very talented. Can you support her in this area? So, so uni was really hard. I gave up after, it was a 3-year course. I gave up after my 2nd year, and then I had a little break from it. I meant to give up at that stage. After I did the 2 years, it was just so hard. I couldn't keep up. The fashion and the designing and the making stuff was a breeze. The written research was the bit that really was the kicker. It sucks the lifeblood out of you. It does. If it takes you so long to digest the information, and then you've got to rewrite it with your own thinking on it. It was so hard. So I gave up in the first 2 years. I think I was off for a year, and then at that stage, I think I had a breakdown in a relationship, and I had another child. That was my 3rd child, and I thought, well, I'm a failure if I don't go back, and I can't be that. So I went back. Still no support. That was one of the hardest things I've done, to be totally honest. Still no support, and I managed to get, doing that first degree, a 2-2. And it was funny. The course director, when she was, after they mark your work and they mark you on a 1-to-1 interview, give you feedback. She said, "Yes, I'm surprised you've managed to get through. We can clearly see you've got an issue with your words and reading and spelling, but it's too late now. It's all finished." And I remember going away with my 2-2 and feeling a little bit deflated. Yeah, and it continued from there. So from there, what did I do then? We started the business. So we did a course to start the business. So you had to learn how to do finance and all these things in relation to the business and marketing and working with factories and buying the skins to make the designs. But I was very good at the designing side. I've still got books and books of designs all around me because I just like that with things. But from there, I went into doing the youth offending and then doing the second course, the second further education when I went into uni again. I did the PGCE. That experience was, I'm trying to find the best word for it. It was not easier, and I felt like something was carrying me through. Something was holding my hand through it. As hard as it was, there was the support there. As soon as I started, there was the support there. I got an assessment straight away. They knew where my weak areas were and where my, areas that didn't need much work on. I was okay with those areas, and the support was there. You only had to say you were struggling somewhere, and somebody would support you. My course director at the time, and he also taught us as well, Matthew Berry, I'll always say his name, because without him, I'd have given up as well there, because it was hard. But, you just need that, and it kind of annoys you, because if you had that at school, then you don't understand the difference your life would have made much earlier on, 30 years on, rather than having to wait as long as I've had to wait. I was in my 40s now, and the support was just amazing. Can't fault Middlesex University. They really work hard to make sure that teacher can teach and understands what they're doing, and they can get their paperwork done and meet the criteria for the course to get yourself your grades, and you can go on and teach. And ever since then, I've been an avid audio book listener, got hundreds of books literally, and reader. I'm still a bit slow at it, but yeah.
So how was your family's support, or how important was your family's support in your re-entry to education?
That the children were great. They don't quite grasp the concept, but they were great. Everyone else was a bit like, you really? They weren't horrible, but don't forget, I didn't really tell people I couldn't read. Right. It's only since I've, gotten to my big age and I've turned into a grandmother, and I don't really give two hoots what you think. But before then, you would have to, pull my fingernails out for me to tell you I can't read. There's no way I tell you. Yeah, so they knew that I liked creative things, and I struggled to secure work that I really liked and really found fulfilling. But they didn't know that I struggled in the way that I did to read, because I didn't tell them. Right. Yeah.
So, as you entered into education, so when most people would have been going out looking for a job or getting a job, you was having to start school all over again. How did that hit your family economically?
Yes, it really did.
And what effect did that have?
Wow. At the time, my partner at the time, we were always strapped for money. Always, never quite had enough. Always looking at the Joneses, and that were never quite meeting up to their standard. But because I'd come from, small beginnings, it wasn't dreadful. But yeah, it makes a difference that you're not going out and earning. Obviously, because you're at school all the time. When I did the first degree was really, really hard. We lived on very little food, and I don't remember us getting furniture for the first few years in this house that we're in now. And it wasn't decorated. I think we lived in one room.
So then, why wouldn't be whatever amount of education that you had be enough, and you just go and get some job, 9 to 5, shift work, whatever it is, and just bring the money in and live?
I know.
What was wrong with that picture for you?
Yeah, just feeling like there was something missing. I wasn't doing enough with myself. The feeling like I couldn't support the children in the things that they'd like to do, like extracurricular activities. My first 2 children didn't experience that because money was so short. A better quality of life. No, you want to see that it's more about your inner, how you feel about yourself. And for me, I didn't feel good about myself just doing those jobs. I found them, once I'd learned them, because you have to learn how to do these things. They're easy and they're low paid, but you still have to learn to do them. But once I'd learned them, the mind-numbing boredom was beyond belief. You try to make them as creative and as interesting as you can because you're a creative person, but for me it just didn't sit right, because like I am creative, right? I want to make these different ideas. I would like to explore different things. If you're a person that just likes to do that thing, that simple thing all the time, and you're happy in that, then yeah, go for it. That's your thing. But for me, it wasn't enough. The need to do more was great.
So you couldn't get it right the first time, right? You went to school, made a real hash of it the first time.
Yeah.
What made you think that you was going to get it right the second time?
I know. What did? Completely true. I think an understanding what changes in my life that I was looking for, going back to get education, could give me. Whereas I didn't have that initially. If I had that understanding when I was at school, I think I would have been more vocal about, well, I don't understand, I can't read that. I'd have told my mum had no idea. So I think if I understood the importance of getting yourself an education to do the things that you want to do, then I would have done it at school then. But I think once I got that understanding when I was much older, then I thought, and then I thought I can get the support. I can find a way. I'll make a way, because I'd learned to make a way doing lots of different things all my life. So I thought, well, in this case, I'll do the same. I'll make a way. I'll do this better than I did it before.
Okay, so let's try and build this up somewhere. So
yeah.
with your dyslexia, stringing putting sentences together, making sense of certain words and letters, etc., was all difficult. How was you with numbers?
Dyscalculia. As bad as, I would say.
Okay, so therefore, the whole spectrum of your education was really hindered and held back because of how badly affected you were by the dyslexia, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So was going to school something that you looked forward to, something that you dreaded, something that you wish that would just come to an end and never have to go back to? What was the whole thing of going to school like? The feeling, let me break it down. If I had to go to school every day, knowing that I couldn't read, knowing that I couldn't see, knowing that nobody was going to pay attention to me, I would have just gone and found something else to do. Because I was rebellious that way. That was me, and I suppose a lot of kids did do that. But you still went to school most of the time, right? Well, if we didn't, our mums and dads found out, they'd whoop us anyway, right?
Yeah, well, I did up to I think it was my last year, because I stayed on a year, so I didn't leave. And most of my friends left at 16 because I thought I'd be able to sort out that reading thing in that last year.
You're beginning to sound like a masochist because it's like this thing ain't happening for you, right? But everybody else is leaving, and you're saying, "No, I'm staying. I want some more of this."
It's so true. I don't know. I must naturally have the will to just want to do. If I want to do something, whatever need necessary, I need to get it done.
So here's what's materializing here at the minute. What's materializing here at the minute is that you had a strong-willed desire to succeed no matter what.
Yes, absolutely.
And that was your driving force, irrespective of how badly you were doing or how badly people said you were doing. There was a desire deep within inside you that was just pushing you through because you weren't going to give up.
Yeah.
Now that's a motivational message in itself.
Yes, I know.
Right?
Like I said, if you find that people talk about it all the time, and you don't. Everyone has it. You just have to find that thing. Right. That you want to give it to.
And what started to drive you to do this all again was your children's need.
Yeah. Yes.
Did that make it easier to go back to school?
It didn't make it easier, but it made it something I had to do. It made it necessary. Okay. Yeah. There was no trying to go around it. I needed to be able to read and spell well enough that I could get employment because remember these jobs I didn't have to fill out an application form for. I just phone up or I'd go and see them.
Do you know, I had a few jobs like that where I just met the guy, I blew them away with what I had to say, and filling out the application form was something that I needed to do later on, and by that time I had the job. I can get anybody to fill it in for me because I wasn't dyslexic. I did very well at school and I was top in English, but I couldn't write. I could spell, but my handwriting was so disgraceful. It brought on an anxiety and a panic attack every time I had to write something. So
I work with children like that as well.
So I didn't want to write. I didn't want to write for fear of people looking at my writing and seeing that the standard of my writing didn't match the level of my intellect.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I could talk a good talk. But ask me to put it down on paper, and you think it's a 6-year-old.
Yeah. Okay.
So I had a massive problem with that. So if I had to fill out an application form, I'd already convinced myself that I ain't getting a job because the moment they see my handwriting, I ain't getting it, right? So that was my phobia, and that was my setback. And furthermore, all my mates were in 1P and 1D and 1E, and that's where the cool guys were. So I wanted to go.
That's right.
Yeah. So here you are now. You're trying to turn in your own way. You're turning your life around. Was spirituality, was faith involved in any of that?
Yes, it was. It was really big, especially in my second degree. That was another thing. I do mention it in the book, and I think I say something like, if it weren't for the power of God, I don't even think I'd get up in the mornings. Because it was so strong.
Yeah. How much of the power of God, tell me, I want to know how much of the power of God worked in your life when you needed it to turn your life around back then? How much did you have to rely on it?
It's a daily ritual. It's something, even now I still do. It's a daily thought I have more than once a day that I'm grateful and thank you and help me in different situations. So it could be any number of, it could be a little thing or a big thing. I'll always remember to give honor and to say thank you. So I mean, it was huge, very important to me, and still is. And that's another, sending these people that have come later in my life to support me, sending the situations that I've had to go through, difficult though some of them have been, I've managed to overcome them, and it's not just self that's done that, and I understand that, and I give honor to the power of God for his blessings on me, his grace upon me.
I don't think if we have a faith and we have had to lean on, rely on, depend on, call on God in any shape or form, there's no way that we can celebrate without giving him the honor and the glory.
Yes, absolutely.
So I fully understand what that is, because it was only when I met with the living God I was able to turn my life around. And believe it or not, I got my first academical qualification at the age of 52.
Wow, congratulations.
I have over 9 now.
Yeah.
In the last 4 years.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I know what that is. I got kicked out of school when I was 14. And no school in London would accept me after that. So I became a proper street boy, the types that you used to read about.
Okay.
Proper G, proper on the streets, with the drugs and everything else.
Yeah.
Gunman, debt collector.
Wow.
I did the whole works. The likes of Wendolph and Larry will tell you the type of life that I lived back then. But it was only through the grace of God, an encounter with God, that I was able to turn my life around and put all of that behind me, and then start living differently in a way that would honor and glorify Him, and find myself giving something back to a community that I so robbed when I was much younger. So I understand where you're coming from with that. But before, we're nowhere near the end of your story yet. In fact, we haven't even got to the middle yet, have we?
No.
So here you are now. You've put yourself through this degree because your children need you. But while your children need you, the economics of your home is falling apart. Relationships are falling apart, I take it.
Yeah. Yes, I did.
But yet you're still striving on to try and get this education you so badly need. How did you get through the breakup of the relationship in all of that? Because it was a long-standing relationship, I believe.
Yes, it was. I think because I was able to keep busy, because I was, it was hard work. So my evenings were full of paperwork and having to do the designing and the written parts of the diploma. So keeping busy is what done it. And then in the week you're at college all week. And then I had the children. So it was just keeping busy and not focusing on the future. My goal was to complete the course and improve the type of work that I got, to have the life that I was dreaming that we could have. So those things are what kept me going, so I didn't fall apart or dwell or be negative about life or give up.
So, you say you didn't give up, but were there times where you struggled to see how you was going to carry on with all of this just falling down around you?
Yeah, many a time. Many a times. And I do remember with the first degree, I got a lot, like I said, the two first children were they're in their teens now. My son was in his teens, and my daughter was just maybe 7 or 8. And then I had the baby. But, so they supported ever such a lot with their brother. So the support from them was one of the important parts of me going to university. Otherwise it would have been, I don't know if I really would have bothered. And then obviously my support from my peers when they were there, because I was one of the older students there, right. Even with my first degree. So there were some students that were very, very helpful to me with the written part of the course. So I give, thank God for sending these people that I've just for no reason other than they've met me and they've liked me, and I've said, oh, could you help with this? Oh, I don't understand that. And they're, oh, I'll show you. And they're quite happy to stay behind and talk you through things or help you write things out, or because we were digital then, so it was all typing things up. So, yeah. On the first degree, I didn't give up. I pressed through and I got it done, even though I took the year out. But like I said, the goal and the determination for that goal that I'd made for myself is what kept me going.
So you do your first degree, then you do your second degree, and now all of a sudden you're becoming a connoisseur.
Yeah, of degrees.
You're becoming a connoisseur of degrees.
Yeah.
Way surpassing anything that you could have ever imagined.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely. Yeah.
the use of these new tools that you were getting, how did they improve the quality of your life?
Gosh, I mean, it makes you look at life somewhere. Because firstly, the experience of university, a lot of people say, oh, the education system is broken, and it's this and it's that. It could be true. However, you get the experience of meeting people from all over the world. I met people from Japan, from Norway, from Switzerland, from Germany, from France, all over the world. That in itself is an experience. It opens your eyes to, it's not just where you live and the circumstances you're in. There's all these other areas that you could travel to and people you could see and meet. And then the experience of having to take in knowledge, having to research, having to search for information, and then once you've searched for it, then having to read it, digest it, then regurgitate it, giving your own spin and slant on it, and understanding of it. That just opened a whole Pandora's box for me, because then it made the world interesting. Now, if I go anywhere and I see anything written, I'm picking it up and I'm reading it. What's going on here? Well, what does it mean? What's the understanding? I'm trying to get so much information in now. Whereas before, it was just I couldn't read, and it literally was like there was not just a veil, but a big metal door in front of you, and you want to go through the door, but you can't because it's big and it's metal. You've got no key for it. There is a key, but you haven't got the key for it, and you can't get over the other side to see what's over there, but you want to. Yeah, it's a funny old place to be in, but that's what it felt like. So it opened my willingness to do more things, to see more things, to speak to more people, because I was very shy and timid. Most people would say, if there was a group of people always liked me and they warmed to me, but I was always the quietest of the group. You didn't often hear me speak. You might hear me chuckle if there was a joke, right? But you didn't hear me interject my ideas, my thoughts on any discussion we might be having. And it just flips that coin for me. So now you're going to hear my opinion on things, whereas before you didn't. Yeah?
You were getting more assertive.
Yes, for sure. And so it just, it did. It turned things, it flipped things, it turned things, it just expanded my horizon, to say.
So when the first area that you were able to start using your newfound tool, which where it had any real dramatical effect and impact, was your work with youth offending. Yes.
So,
tell me some more about that. How were you able? Because I got to admit, youth offending. I volunteered at youth offending for a short time when I was in East London, the one at the back of East Ham.
Yeah, Canning Town.
Yeah, I volunteered down there for a while. Worked with some of the youth offending teams down there, some of the kids down there as well. But I didn't do it for long because I had a bit of a habit myself that most people didn't know about at the time, and I was still using crack cocaine back then.
Wow.
And nobody knew. Well, they didn't know anyway. But it overwhelmed me to the extent where I couldn't even maintain that voluntary that I was doing down there, and nobody was none the wiser as to when I stopped or why I stopped. But I was able to make a connection with several youths while I was there. So it's the one area that I never excelled in that I really would have loved to. So
it's an opportunity, yes.
So just share with us some of the moments that you had encouraging and working with some of the kids from youth offending, where you were able to use your experience in order to impress upon them a will or a desire for them to want to try harder.
Yeah, what really jumps out to me when you ask that question is working with the young people, because I initially started as a volunteer and I was quite good at working with the young people on one-to-one, so they asked me to stay and gave me a contract and started to pay me and stuff, which was excellent. So
that's all, when they pay you, that's good. That's always good.
Yeah, it certainly is. And from there, when I used to take the young people out, I remember saying, a lot of them asking questions like, could you give them written pieces of information, thinking they could read like you can now. And they'd ask, well, where are we going and what are we doing? And they'd, well, you've had an itinerary. Why are you asking this question? Or we'd be out and they'd say, Miss, what does that say over there? And they'd use the excuse that they're too far away, they can't see, or they can't be bothered to read. Can you just read it for me? And I twigged on after a few sessions with a particular young person. This young person cannot read. So after a few more sessions with him, you start delving a little bit deeper. You start making inquiries of other caseworkers that might be working with the young person. You start asking the young person themselves, about their education. And it was then that I realised that he couldn't read. I also noticed that not all the young people I worked with, you have quite a range of children that you work from for different ages. At the youth attendance team at the time, you could take them from the age of about 10 up to 18, then they move over to probation if they're still either going through a case or an order, a community order that they might be finishing. Then we'd keep them. But other than that, by 19, we've moved them over to probation if they're still getting into trouble. But other than that, we work with them, and I found that a lot of them were no longer attending school. They either hadn't been for a while, or for a long while they hadn't been, or they were excluded, or those kind of things. Or they just chose not to. There was one young boy who's fantastic. We worked with him for a long time, and I worked with him in 2 different capacities. I worked with him and with his parents, because I also did parenting support. And he just decided one day he just wasn't going to go to school anymore, and he was 14. But he could read. But what you found with a lot of them was they dropped out of school or ended up getting excluded because they weren't diagnosed with some sort of difference that they might have. So they could have been Asperger's or autistic or ADHD. A lot of them were ADHD. Or dyslexic or dyscalculic. Do you understand? There were all these different that weren't diagnosed before, and then they weren't in school. So they're out and about. They're getting themselves into all sorts of mischief because they're not in school. Hence, they come to our attention. So it was either prevention work, or you're working directly with them because they've gone through the court system and they've been given a community punishment order. And I found that there were a few of them that were not able to read. And what we had decided to do with some of the other caseworkers, and we had education that were a link for us to get children back into school again once they started to have to come and see us on some level, and they weren't in school. We had links with education directly in the office. And I remember saying to them, and there was an external service that we worked with as well that would take the what were they called? The ISSP, the Intensive Surveillance something program, and that's for those children that were given community punishments, but they realistically could have gone to jail, and they were seen by us daily. They were seen by some worker or the other on a daily basis. So they were considered quite dangerous young people, quite dangerous children. And they needed monitoring, but not quite as much as for them to go to youth prison or prison. So I noticed that there was this, and I remember speaking to them about it and saying, well, can't we do something to support them? And what I had to do with the young people was, some of them, not all of them, because sometimes they weren't at home anymore, or they were going to be moved away from home because the situation was too difficult there, with them getting into trouble and the whole thing, and there might be younger peers in there, and parents weren't coping and things like that. So I used to have to do things like go with them to start bank accounts, to join the gym, so they had an activity, to go to the dentist, the doctor, substance misuse appointments. And I said, each one of these things that we have to do, usually there's some sort of form they've got to complete. I said, why don't we just get all the forms, i.e. as well as like the passport form, the driving lessons form, the driving test form, your provisional license form, those kind of forms, and support them in filling those out. And then they found an external provider that provided education for adults in the form of there was this unusual book system that they used. I didn't quite get on with it, but then they started this massive program for educating the young people that came through the youth offending team at that time. And I'd like to think that I was one of the initiators of that program, and that was just through working with young people and seeing that there was that need for a lot of them, that they needed the extra support, and they weren't at school, they weren't at a PRU, so they needed the extra support when they came in to see us. And we started a program doing that at the youth offending team and at the external services we used as well. But yeah, there were a number of young people that were so interesting, their lives were interesting. I remember working with a young boy that was a traveller, and when he talked about his life, it was so interesting, the way they moved around the country and his thoughts on being on the order that he was given. He didn't take it as anything. Usually they're a bit stressed, they've got appointments and things like that. It was no big thing for him. He said, oh, my father's been through it, my uncle, my cousin. It was just such an interesting vocation to go into. And what I found really heartwarming and maybe enthusiastic about it was that the family members that were always would thank you, say, oh, thank you for looking after him, thank you for watching out for him. Because I always had the best, my mind, when I started working with him, I'd always think, you know what, he could turn himself around now, and he could be that, because they'd talk to you about stuff that they'd wanted to do or what they want to be when they grow up and that kind of stuff. And you think, we can do some work with you to get you to do those things. And there was some fantastic outcomes we had with some young people. Not all of them were brilliant. We had some suicides, which were very sad because you're working with a young person, so you get to know them. But we had some excellent outcomes where they weren't at school anymore, they've gone back to education and they're doing very well, or they leave us and they go into work or further education and they're doing very well. Do you know what I'm saying? It's just the difference from, because it was the fashion industry is interesting, but it didn't give me that spark of enthusiasm. You didn't get the thanks. Somebody didn't go, oh, thank you for designing that jacket. Whereas when you work with the young people, their parents, their carers would always be so grateful to you. I remember going with one of my young people, I dropped him home, and it was one of the religious festival times, and they do breaking their fast. Okay. And I was literally dragged in and sat down on the floor and said, you're going to break bread with us. Okay. I said, okay. And I did.
Yeah, giving back is an amazing experience. Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. So you don't get things like that. I didn't anyway in the fashion industry. Maybe they do now.
I can't imagine anybody getting anything like that in the fashion industry.
So yeah, it was so. From there, I just thought it literally switched on a button, a light bulb moment for me. Like, oh, I like doing the supporting role. I really enjoy it. And any area that a young person would come and say that they're having difficulty, even if I can't do it myself, I'd go out of my way, let me see who I can find that can help you. And I enjoy that. It helps me to expand my horizons of the different professions that I interacted with, because I had to sometimes go beyond the youth offending team, beyond our usual tiered service within that borough, to maybe small community services that weren't part of what we'd usually speak to and use. It was such a global experience and so interesting to me, and it's where I wanted to stay in that supporting role, and that's kind of what I've done with going through teaching and doing what I do now.
And that's where we want to take it to next, because you did the youth offending, which is obviously a very great opportunity for you to be able to impact individuals who are not as fortunate, troubled, so to speak, challenging at the very least. But now from there, you've now gone into the education system, right into the heart of the matter, dealing with kids in the midst of their education. How useful have you found your learning experience as a stepping stone or a platform for you to be able to support others in education?
In relation to being an encourager, so as an advisory to support in their moving forwards and staying in education and working as hard as they possibly can, invaluable. I wasn't particularly excellent as kind of a control person of a lesson, but whenever I went into a lesson, it was always about the children enjoying the lesson and getting something out of it. Yeah, no matter how small, and it might not have been necessarily related to the topic we would have been covering. So the youth offending side has made me more holistic in how I teach and how I like to interact with young people, rather than an authoritarian, you're going to get detentions if you don't fill out this form. I'm more, well, how can we get you to do that? What steps do we need to take, or I need to take, or what do I need to say or do to get you to meet the requirements of the lesson, which are to complete X, Y, Z? I work kind of that way, and working at the youth offenders team is what has given me that kind of way of teaching. It's very different from how most teachers work their lessons, and it's a little bit out of the box, to say the least. But the children usually enjoy my lessons, and so do I enjoy teaching them.
That's good. I mean, from an observer's point of view, I worked at the Salvation Army for 3.5, nearly 4 years, from 2008-9 to 2013. One of the biggest concerns for me was the growing number of youths that were being engaged by the homeless services, breakdown of family relationships, and unable to fend for themselves. And then when you start to support them and you start to keyword them, you start to find out some of the basic needs that they struggle with. Is a lack of basic skills. Some of them who've had their own flat have been evicted because they can't read the letters that have been coming, asking them to fill this in by this time or else. And stuff like that. And some of the basic, communication skills that they lack. So, for someone like you going into a school now, for that school, is great. But how much more is the type of experience that you've got needed in schools today?
Oh gosh, they really should have a department for this sort of interaction with children in school. Like I said, school is very old-fashioned. I mean, you'd be surprised some of the books that they're still reading. My son he's 12, he bought a book at home that he's got to read for school. And I've said they are still reading that book in school, because I remember I had to read it when I was at school. And I keep saying it needs to be dragged kicking and screaming into the 21st century. The idea of having children seated in rows still. And you expect, because we know now that the diversity of the children in your class,
it's very regimental, isn't it?
Still, even now, and they use an authoritarian tone over the children. So it's detentions and taking things away and
derogatory and condescending,
literally flogging them into submission. With mental torture, making the child sit in a room quietly for an hour, and their friends have gone home. They want to go home because they've come in late. And I always ask the question, because there was a big drive at my life school to make children come in on time. And I'm like, well, sorry to be funny, my question would be, why are they late? And it was like, so what detention are we going to give them now? An hour and a half, it was just waved away. We don't want to deal with that. That's too big for us. We just want to give them the punishment.
And that's still the problem. You actually get punished
ridiculous.
for what you do rather than why it's done.
It's ridiculous, but every school should have a department where you have holistic entrepreneurs, business owners, people like yourself, people that make films,
people
that
like
come
yourself,
in and do, people like me that come in and do a small piece of work. It doesn't have to be, weeks and years and years. It doesn't have to take them away from having to do the fundamentals. You must learn to read, you must learn to spell, you must learn numbers. These things are a requirement. Not just those things, but the different holistic things. How to talk to somebody at an interview if you've got one. How to talk to somebody if you want to volunteer. So how to have
here's
idea.
the thing, Sandra. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
When I was at school, we used to have careers advisor. Do you remember?
Don't start me on that one.
Yeah, we used to have a careers advisor. And
they still have them now.
Where? I've never heard of one since.
They don't come in externally. Usually they get a poor teacher and say, you're going to teach that stuff. You're going to be the careers advisor with a senior head of the department, and that's how they do it. They don't generally get somebody external in, and they should. But that's how they do it now. So they still have it, but we had somebody external. I remember when I was at school that came in. It doesn't make them good, though.
No, but still, we went to somebody who was absolutely expert at what they did.
Yes, absolutely.
They were trained and knowledgeable. And if you wanted to go in a particular direction, they had things available to you to support you in going that way.
Yes, not just tell you go and do this, but actually you can come here and you can do 4 hours here. Yeah. Just to give you an idea, a taster. There isn't anything like that.
Proper work experience back in them days.
Oh, they don't have such things now. My other son, who's 18 now, he did work experience for 2 weeks, and we nearly didn't get him into their work experience. I had to go to school. I had to not demand, but insist that he had it work experience like everybody else, because their work experience they had set up for him had fallen through, and they were like, oh well. And I thought, oh well, you will sort out something for him. We will be doing some sort of work experience. But it's so old-fashioned, and unless you're au fait with how school works, then your child will miss out on the little that is there. I don't know why they don't like letting other services in. I don't know why they don't like working with other services. It's been a struggle for me. The few schools that I have worked in, they think a little bit outside the box, but most don't. Most just, it's the same platform as sitting children in a row, giving them stuff to read out of books, which is not a problem, but when you're just giving them a piece of paper to fill out and just reading off the board, it doesn't meet the needs of every child. It doesn't. It doesn't meet the needs of every child.
We've been talking to you, Sandra Rigobert, who's diagnosed or found out that she had dyslexia at an early age or even at a latter age, and went through education all over again to better herself, in spite of and despite all the odds and all the objections and all the hoo-ha that might have come with it. Because you was inspired and motivated that your children needed support that you couldn't give them, and it's made you a new and better you. And from that, your book, Dyslexic, The Silent Difference, Steps to a Successful You with Dyslexia, is now out and available on hard copy and soft copy, etc.
It's on Amazon as a hard copy, a paperback, and it's also a digital download. And
what will people get from this book, apart from what we've just heard? Because I did, by the way, I cheated. I was meant to be going through the book, but for some reason Amazon it's telling me that I need to set up another account for some reason. So I got to chapter 3, and I was trying to get onto another chapter, and it wouldn't let me. So that's why I've had to redirect the whole interview and just make it more about you. But I thought that was good anyway, because we get to hear the you that's wrote the book. This is you. This is you from start to finish. How you overcame your difficulties, what you used them for, and how you were able to make your life turn around and then successful, and how others benefited from what you learned and the strife that you went through to get to what you got through. And so now no one stands in a better position to be able to write a book that can go out to the hearts and minds of those who have struggled with something that's quite similar as you have than you. So Dyslexic, The Silent Difference. Tell us just a little bit about what people can get out of this book.
So, like I said, it was written to kind of lighten the load for myself, because I just felt burdened with having to tell the need to tell how I've experienced life. And then I wanted to also share some kind of, I don't know how to put it in the most simple way, tips and tricks of how you can either recognize it in somebody, a child possibly, and what kind of, how and then from there, what you can do to support them to start reading, start the process of learning letters, and what words they should know right at the beginning of learning to read. So it's to support people that either have had it, to show that don't give up, whatever it is you're trying to pursue, there is a way that you can get to do what you want and need to do. And to support people that think, well, I think maybe my child might be, or my cousin or my nephew might be dyslexic at any age, and some of the tips you could use to share the story, as well as, well, what we could do maybe if you're willing to start learning, we could do this and this to start you on the process to improve your reading, and start you on that journey of improving the situation that you might be in if it relates to reading and spelling. So there is a chapter in the book that goes through kind of your key words you should know from when you start reading as a child, which is quite useful. Lots of people don't know that. I didn't know until I started to do the research. And then from there, how you could use that information that I've shared with you, of reading small amounts of text, of documenting what words you don't know, of going back and learning those words, and then rereading the text. Yes, it's arduous. It's long, young people like to say. It's long, miss.
It's long.
Yeah, it's long.
It's a long thing.
It's yes. I hear it all the time, but that's what I had to do. Yeah. It depends on how much you want to improve that situation, and how much your family might want to do it for you, or help support you in doing that, or yourself. It's meant as an encouragement, not just about dyslexia, but about anything that you might have a struggle with. This is what it looks like for a dyslexic person, but it could be any other thing that you're struggling with and you want to overcome it, and the sheer determination and persistence you have to apply to it in order to overcome it. It was meant to be an encouraging book, as well as an informative book about dyslexia.
And that's what we've really been. I think that's what we've really been able to get out of today's interview with you, Sandra. Is again, I'll say, your deep-rooted desire to want to do well against all the odds. There are many different ailments that children and youths come across in their early ages and teenagers, where they're going through school and are finding difficult. And most of them tend to give up because there's no one available to support them, there's no one to identify these problems, and there's no one to direct them or signpost them as to where they can go and get the help. So very often, many of them give up and just carry on living the lives that they think that they were ordained to live, as bad as it is.
Yeah.
But you didn't give up, and you chose to go back to school, re-educate yourself, even though you... I mean, it sounds like you're a glutton for punishment, because
it does, doesn't it? A bit sadistic.
You know, you've gone to school for X amount of time, all of these years, and you couldn't get it right then, and you can say, you know what, yeah, hands up, I'm going to go again. You know, but hey, you did it. You beat it. You conquered it. You overcome it, and you've excelled in it, to so much so that your working career is quite different to the one that you started to spiel out at the beginning of this interview. You know, working in various warehouses and shops and all these other types of apparently meaningless jobs that go nowhere, dead-end jobs that some people can just plod on and do, almost like Groundhog Day.
It suits some people, and I have to admit, I've met people that do that and they just love it. They're in their element, it's what they enjoy, it ticks their boxes for them. But for me, it wasn't enough, and for a lot of people, it's not enough.
Some people just want more. Some people need more.
Yes.
And some people can't do with what they've got in a very positive way. And I think what I'm beginning to find out about you in this time that we've spent, this 2 hours that we've spent on here, is that you're a very strong-willed individual, highly motivated.
Yes,
and will be an inspiration to all those that you come across. So,
thank you.
What
Thank you
will
so
be
much. It's really
your
nice.
what will be your final words to your listening audience before we say a goodbye for now? And it's not a goodbye forever, because we're going to come across each other somewhere. I know we will.
I'm sure. Yeah. It would most probably be to that resounding message that you're hearing ever such a lot now. No matter what you're going through, and we all have our difficult times, don't give up. Whatever strategy you need, whatever way of doing things you need to develop for yourself, develop them and don't give up. Push through that hard time, push through that pain, push through that difficulties. You will find that someone will speak to you, you'll see something online, you'll bump into someone in the shop, and it will just start that process for you or continue it on for you. Just be focused. And yes, it's difficult. Yes, it's hard, especially with the young people now doing their tests. They're due to do their exams. A lot of them are quite overwhelmed and quite stressed as young people about their results, and not wanting to even try. We're not going to talk about not trying. We're going to talk about, right, so you've got this thing to do. How are we going to do it? Let's look at the steps. Let's look at what we need to do to then at least get you to sit down and revise, or to help you retain the information. Do we need to repeat things? Whatever we need to do, whatever strategy you need to do, we're going to put it in place, and we're going to get it done. We're going to smash whatever it is you need to smash, and we're going to meet that goal that you need to meet. It's that message of don't give up. Don't throw the towel in. Not so young. So young. You know. Yeah.
If you had a parent who was concerned about the standard of their children's reading or etc., is there a website that they could go to where they can get some information?
Yeah. Reach out to me. I've had a couple of companies' names, because I named the company and I didn't check the name, so you conflicted with other companies. But this is our name now. It's nobody else's. All over the world. It's a1tribe.com. a1tribe.com. Reach out to me, send me a note on there, or you can email a1tribelimited@google.com. Just reach out to me, and we can have a discussion, and I can see what help I can give you.
Well, Sandra, the book Dyslexic, The Silent Difference, The New You, Steps to a Successful You with Dyslexia, Even You Can Have a Life That Counts, is ready on Amazon and available for people to buy and read and educate themselves. And all I can do is take my hat off to you and say thank you very much for sharing your life and your world of dyslexia with us on World Jam Global Radio, especially with me, right here on Issues Today. And we look forward to catching up with you on another occasion. Thank you very much, Sandra.
Thank you so much, Kervin. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
We too. We're out of here. Thank you very much. We're out of time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well.
I already did my time. I paid.
So the book Dyslexia, The New You.
I already did my time. I paid for my crime.
The Silent Difference. Available from Amazon. And all the links that Sandra just talked about a short while ago, you'll find available on World Jam Global Radio's website, www.worldjamglobal.com. We'll also post them on Issues Today. You'll find them on my Facebook page also. You'll find them on World Jam Global Twitter account.
I didn't really care about the system. It was all about survival. It was do or die. I had to.
And we just want to say a big thank you to all of you who joined us on this show.
School. I learned my lessons in the street.
Inspirational, informative, educational.
Good with my hands and very quick on my feet. feet. I was swimming in women. I had girls all over the street. I was getting money. Life was so sweet. Now things have changed.
Don't forget, we're going to be back next Saturday night
No gun in my hand.
or Saturday afternoon, wherever time span you might be.
All in jail.
We've got Andy Christopherson from Albuquerque with the ABQ update from Burka Media.
Already getting my time.
One of our dear friends and a regular guest on this show.
Already getting my time. I pay for my crime.
Again, as I said, we've got some really big shows lined up for the month of June.
I pay for
So please stay tuned. Keep your eyes out on World Jam Global Radio.
getting my
Keep your eyes out on Issues Today, whether it be the Twitter account or the Facebook account. We'll keep you up to date and informed.
dealer so much
My name is Kervin Julien. It's time for me to say I'm out of here.
supply. I'm not proud
I
of
want to say congratulations to Arsenal lifting the FA Cup just a very short time ago, beating Chelsea 2-1.
doing all kind of stupid shit. Now
You can join me again tomorrow morning for Church Before Church. It's the Wake Up Everybody Sunday Gospel Show,
my brain was so numb. I was a real
8 till 10 each and every single Sunday morning.
chump. Me and Billy the Kid.
But as for me, I'm out of here.
Terminator, much meaner than Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'd shoot you